Welcome back to Birds of a Feather. This is your daily Baltimore sports podcast. My name is Nathan Stroud, and today we are back at it. Haven't been able to record over the past couple of days due to some stuff going on, but we are good to go, and we are back. And we're going to be going over a lot of stuff regarding the Ravens and the Orioles today. Today was the trade deadline for the NFL, and the Ravens had a very disappointing trade deadline that we're going to go over some of the moves they've made over the past couple of days in just a second. Going to give my thoughts and opinions on the trade deadline in general and kind of just like where we're at moving forward throughout the rest of the season. So we'll go over that first in this episode, but then later on in the video, later on in the episode, we are going to be going over some updates for the Orioles. Craig Albertaz did have his press conference today. We're going to go over a couple of quotes that were said during that. And then we also have a couple of signings and trades that the Orioles have made over the past couple of days. Very minor moves, but we're going to go over that as well. And also just talk about what there is to look forward to really for the rest of this year. Over the next couple of months, there is a lot to look forward to regarding obviously the Ravens playing football every single week for the rest of this year, and hopefully even beyond that as well. But obviously the Ravens bye week is behind them, so Ravens games every single day every single week for the rest of the year, plus obviously all the stuff during the week, practices, injury reports, news, all that stuff going on there. And then for the Orioles, we're going to be going over a lot of stuff here coming up about potential free agent signings, good fits, good stuff like that, because MLB free agency is about to be in full gear, and there are quite a few names at the Orioles that I want to see them go after, and obviously pitching is a big part of it. So, as time goes on over the next couple of months, as free agency is happening, we're going to be given updates on, all the Orioles signings that they do. And before that, especially during this week as well, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later, but tomorrow I am going to be doing a video on, Orioles free agents that I really think that they should go after this offseason, because there's a lot of really big names out there that I would like to see us be aggressive at. But today is just kind of an update video just to kind of get everything back on track regarding the Ravens and the Orioles. And let's start off with the Baltimore Ravens. So going over the Baltimore Ravens today, as you can see on the screen, if you're listening on Spotify, basically what's on the screen right now is a graphic that says trades today and has the Baltimore Ravens with a 0 and the Baltimore Orioles with a 1, because the Orioles did make a move that we will talk about a little bit later on today. It's not a major move or anything, but it's a move that I don't mind. We'll go over that later on in the episode. But today was the NFL trade deadline, a day where a lot of teams and fans of teams and stuff like that will beg their GM to go out there and make moves to try and make their team better for the remainder of the season or even beyond that. And the Ravens are in a position, obviously, where they're riding a bunch of momentum recently with getting Lamar Jackson back. They've won 2 straight games. They're sitting only 2 games back of the Steelers for first in the AFC North. So the Ravens are riding a lot of heavy momentum right now, and you really would think that this was going to be such a perfect opportunity for the Ravens to go out there and address a very clear and obvious need in the trenches, whether that's interior offensive line with the guard position or interior defensive line with the D tackles or the edge rushers. Those were the clear and obvious problems all season long when it comes to this Ravens team. And even with the team that we have organized right now, they still are a great team, but there has been struggles in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. That's been a huge problem all year long. And the Ravens did make a couple of trades that we'll go over in just one second, but my initial reaction and my initial thoughts before we go over the moves that they actually did make, because we're really only going to highlight like 2 trades that they did, because obviously they did do like the Alohi Gilman for Odafe Owe like player swap that is, funnily enough, like worked out well for both teams. It's really been a win-win. Odafe Owe didn't have a sack for the Ravens all year in like the first 4 games, got traded to the Chargers, and I think he's had a sack in every game since he's been there, so shout out to him. And then for Alohi Gilman, it's not necessarily what Alohi Gilman's been doing on the field. It's kind of the domino effect of having Kyle Hamilton be able to do more and be more of a wild card guy, someone that can kind of be up and play up more, someone that can blitz the quarterback, someone that can play up more like a linebacker. So Kyle Hamilton doesn't just have to stick in the back like a safety. with having Alohi Gilman, we can kind of run a 3 safety set with having Starks and Gilman in the back, and then having, Kyle Hamilton being able to play up, being able to play back, being able to rush the quarterback and doing all that stuff. So it's really made Kyle Hamilton a lot more free of a player, and that's how you're supposed to use him. And, we didn't really use him like that at the beginning of the season, but throughout the years of his career, we've seen him succeed in that type of role. So, and the defense has also looked a lot better since that trade has happened. So it really was a win-win on both sides. And to be honest with you, that arguably is like the biggest impactful trade that we've made this entire deadline. There's a lot of teams that didn't really go out there and make a lot of moves when they wanted them to. There was a lot of potential rumors about us moving Mark Andrews. There was rumors about all this different stuff. But the Ravens really did 3 trades at the deadline, and one of them was like a player swap, one of them was them trading away a player, and one was them actually receiving a player. So we're going to first go over the trade where they sent away a player, but I do want to say my initial thoughts and reactions before we go over the 2 trades that were made over the past few days. My initial thoughts before we go over them is that I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed. I'm kind of shocked in a way as well that EDC didn't go out there and actually make that move. But, first things first, I'm disappointed. I'm upset. I think that this was a failure of a trade deadline by Eric DeCosta and the Ravens front office. I thought that they had the perfect opportunity to go out there and address needs. And they kind of just sat back and felt a little bit lazy, sat back, didn't really do anything that was seriously going to move the needle of this defense or just team in general. And we're kind of just stuck with what we got, which is fine. The Ravens team as it stands right now is fine. Having Lamar Jackson back, you have a ton of talent on the defense. They've been playing better. Obviously, you have a ton of talent on the offense as well. But there's small things like the interior offensive line that could have definitely used help for the guard position, because the guard position has not been a strong suit for the Ravens this year. Lamar's been under a lot of pressure, so cleaning that up would have been nice. And then also getting, a good to elite edge rusher in a way, or also just a solid, good interior D tackle would be really nice. Us not getting a D tackle was something that was really bugging me a little bit, because I understand, and I'll just say it right now, we ended up trading for Draymond Jones, who is listed as a linebacker, but he really isn't. He really is an edge rusher who rushes the quarterback. He is solid. We'll go over his stats and everything in just a second, and he's been really hot recently. He's had 4.5 sacks in the last 4 games, so he's been playing really good recently. But what I'm going to say is none of the trades that the Ravens have done were anything needle-moving trades. And as you can see from this graphic, the Ravens didn't even make a trade today. The trade they made for Draymond Jones was yesterday, and then the other trade that they made was a few days ago. So just not the greatest things in the entire world. Disappointed by the deadline. Thought they had an opportunity to really, really improve this team and move the needle at a time where they're riding a wave of momentum, and it would have been perfect. But now we're stuck with what we got. We're going to have to work around it, which is fine, I guess. Obviously I still have a lot of expectations in this team. This team doesn't all of a sudden become garbage, but, near the end of the year when we're fighting for that playoff spot, or near the end of the year when we're hopefully in the playoffs and we're in those, close games and big games against really good teams, the trenches are such an important part of football. We saw this past season with the Philadelphia Eagles, what they did on their Super Bowl run with the trenches, and really what they did in the Super Bowl with their trenches, getting to Patrick Mahomes, putting him under a lot of pressure, and also with the offensive line just blocking for Saquon Barkley, letting him do his thing. So the biggest moves of the day, and really the biggest moves of this deadline in general, were definitely the trades that the Jets did. They traded Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys, which I was sick about, because I was so badly wanting Quinnen Williams as a Raven. Every single Ravens fan out there was protesting for Quinnen Williams, because he would have been a perfect fit for this team now and in the future, especially with not really knowing the future of Nnamdi Madubuike, and if he's even ever going to play football again. It would have been a perfect replacement. But we didn't get him. He went to the Cowboys for a first-round pick and a second-round pick, so it is a very hefty price, and I didn't think that Eric DeCosta was going to want to give up any first-round picks or even second-round picks, and I think that's why we ultimately didn't do a trade. But then the other trade today was Sauce Gardner going to the Colts for 2 first-round picks, which is crazy. Obviously, Sauce Gardner getting moved is crazy, but 2 first-round picks is a lot for Sauce Gardner. So shout out to the Jets. I think they had a really good day. They traded two elite players, but they have a huge haul of draft picks over the next couple of years. So shout out to them. They're in full rebuild mode, but was really disappointed that we couldn't get Quinn Williams. But let's just go over the first trade that the Ravens made just a few days ago. And probably a lot of you guys already have seen the trade and stuff like that, but we have not talked about it yet on this on the podcast because I haven't really made an episode in the past few days because of some stuff going on. But we're back and good to go, and everything is fine. But the trade that we made a few days ago, I think it was actually Sunday, afternoon, we made the trade, or Saturday. We traded Jaire Alexander to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 6th-round pick. That's all that it was. I think it was Jaire Alexander and a 7th-round pick for a 6th-round pick from the Eagles. So again, this was like a nothing trade, but the reason why this trade just rubs me the wrong way a little bit, I understand doing the trade. Look, Jaire Alexander, I made a bonus episode on us signing him because it was a big deal at the time. Jaire Alexander getting released from the Packers. He's had a lot of great years over there in Green Bay. He's played very well, but over the past couple of years, he's really started to decline. Injuries have really gotten to him. He's not really played as many games. And us going out there and signing Jaire was really a, no risk, high reward type move. And that kind of quickly turned on us whenever we saw his performance against the Bills in Week 1. But at the end of the day, Jaire Alexander was a healthy scratch in pretty much every Ravens game except for 2. He played Week 1. He was a starter Week 1 against the Bills, where he played horrible. There was multiple different times where he got targeted. Just off the top of my head, I can think of the pass interference call on third. I think it was 4th and 3. Josh Allen launched a deep ball down to Khalil Shakir or Keon Coleman. Jaire Alexander drew a pass interference. Pass interference was on him. The Bills end up scoring. That was in either the second quarter or third quarter, but that happened. He also got, absolutely crossed up by Keon Coleman, got absolutely cooked really to end the game. So Jaire Alexander, his Ravens highlights, there really is none. He really didn't do anything for the Ravens. He only played in 2 games, actually, this entire year. He played against the Bills, where he was horrible, and then he didn't play against the Browns, didn't play against the Lions, didn't play against the Chiefs, but then he played against the Texans, where we were kind of forced to start him because we were already down so many players. So Jaire Alexander played a decent amount in that Texans game, and he got a touchdown scored on him. And then he kind of defended the team when the Texans rookie was doing the Ray Lewis celebration. He went over and, was showing some fight and stuff like that and, saying we don't want you to do that. So that was kind of good to see. I guess the only highlight of Jaire Alexander's Ravens career is actually not anything to do with being on the football field. It's actually just standing up for the team. But this was not a great signing at the end of the day. We didn't sign him for a lot of money, so it's not like we lost money really doing this. Now that we traded him, we did get back, I think, $4 or $5 million. But Jaire, I wanted this signing to work out so bad for the Ravens. Whenever we signed him, it was such a cool moment. I literally made a video, when we, 10 minutes after we signed him, I made a video. It was such a big deal. So I wanted this trade to work out, or not trade, I wanted this signing to work out so much. Him and Lamar are really good friends. They both went to Louisville. The vibes that he was bringing off in training camp and everything was high. He, from reports and everything, he played very well in training camp. He started off the year as a starter, and then he quickly, fell down the depth chart after Week 1, and he was really the cornerback 4 on the Ravens. He was kind of right there with TJ Tampa, but Jaire Alexander didn't really have any special teams value. And usually when you're a cornerback 4 or something, usually you'll be someone that plays a lot on special teams, but I don't think we want to play Jaire Alexander in the special team. So it was just a very weird situation, kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. So just not a great situation for Jaire. Not a great situation for the Ravens, and eventually they did have to move on, which I understand. I'm not mad that they traded him. I'm more mad of the fact that this signing of Jaire just didn't work out when there was so much hope and so much optimism that it could. But Jaire Alexander did get traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, the Eagles went out and traded for him. The Eagles are obviously all over all these players and trades and stuff like that. But we do end up getting a 6th-round pick in return. Who are we going to take with that 6th-round pick? What are we going to do with it? Who knows? Eric DeCosta loves his late-round picks. He loves his 5, 6, 7-round picks. So, shout out to him, I guess. Jair gets a new fresh start in Philly. I don't know how much they're going to use him over there. They've already got some solid corners over there. I guess they're just kind of taking a shot on him, want him to be in that locker room. But I understand the Ravens, getting rid of him. I understand it. It just really sucks that it just didn't work out. And then the other trade that we're going to go over is the really the only trade in terms of like the trade deadline that the Ravens made. This was the only move that they made. They made this move yesterday night. They were expected to hopefully make another, defensive end or D tackle or maybe even offensive line move today. But unfortunately, as I said earlier, they didn't even make a single trade today at all for anyone. So we ended up trading for Draymond Jones, who's listed as an outside linebacker, but he's somebody who really does rush the quarterback a lot. We'll go over his stats over the years as a player. I think he was drafted in 2019, went to Ohio State, drafted by the Broncos. He was pretty solid on the Broncos. He was a solid player. He left to go chase the money. The Titans gave him a good amount of money, and he's a solid player. He's a solid edge rusher. I'm going to say he's an edge rusher because that's kind of like what he is. So we like the edge rushing room and the pass rush room did get better with this trade, which I'm fine with. I'm not mad at this trade. And I think a lot of people are going to be critical about this trade because the Ravens didn't go out and make another move, so it kind of just makes it seem like the Ravens were leaning so much on this deal. But this trade was Draymond Jones for a 5th-round pick that could become a 4th-round pick. So, again, Draymond Jones is someone who I think has 1 year left on his deal, so that's why the Titans were willing to move him. But what's really interesting about Draymond Jones is that over the last 4 games that he's played for the Titans, he's actually had a sack in at least 1 sack in every single game. He has 4.5 sacks in his last 4 games. He's looked really good recently. He's caught fire recently. He's played really well recently. And I'm praying and I'm hoping that he can take that momentum and take what he's been doing and bring it over the Ravens because this pass rush room has been really rough all year. Mike Green was the main guy for most of the season because Calvin Noy is hurt. But as of right now, it's Draymond Jones, Mike Green, Calvin Noy, and Carl Lawson. I don't even really know how much reps Carl Lawson's going to get. But that is kind of your pass rush room right now, which is not really great on paper. But getting Draymond Jones does improve the pass rush room, which, it's better than nothing. We could have not made this trade and, really been screwed. But this Draymond Jones move, I'm not mad at it at all. Again, I think myself and a lot of other people were expecting a pretty bigger, like a bigger trade today. But we didn't get one. We didn't get a bigger trade, and this was kind of the move at the deadline that the Ravens made in terms of actually acquiring a player because, again, the Alohi Gilman and Odafe Owe trade was pretty much a swap, and then they gave away the player in Jair Alexander, and then you gain a player in Draymond Jones here. So I'm not mad at it. Obviously, we're going to have to see on the field how well he plays, but not a bad acquisition at all. Someone who's been playing really well recently, someone who has been a solid edge rusher throughout his career. He's somebody who can also drop back a little bit if he needs to. So I'm really interested to see how we're going to use him. I'm interested to see the impact that he's going to make, and hopefully he can go out there and play very well for us. But I don't mind this move at all. But this being the move of the deadline for the Ravens, in that sense, is pretty disappointing. And when we go here and actually look at his stats throughout his career, we can actually see what he's done throughout this season. Obviously, first game of the year, had two tackles. He actually didn't have a sack for the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He didn't have a sack for the first 5 games of the season that he played in. But if you look at the past 4 games against the Chargers this past Sunday, the Colts, the Patriots, and the Raiders, he's actually gotten a sack in all 4 of these games. So he had 1 sack against the Raiders, 1 sack against the Patriots, 1 sack against the Colts, and then 1.5 sacks and 4 combined tackles against the Chargers. So he had technically his best game of his season in his latest game, so at least we're getting him when he's on a hot streak. He's been playing very well recently. Obviously, 4.5 sacks in the last 4 games is really, really good numbers. And again, just hoping that he can kind of bring that to the Ravens and hopefully he can get 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 sacks while he's over here in Baltimore. So hopefully he can have a good time here. Hopefully he can get to the quarterback. Just adding pressure, any sort of pressure that he can add is better than we already had. So hopefully he's going to improve this team more. But But again, 4.5 sacks in the last 4 games is very solid. But when you go and look at his career in general, it's nothing like too crazy. He got drafted in 2019 with the Broncos, had 3.5 sacks in that. I don't know how many games he played, but he had 3.5 sacks in 2019. He had 6.5 sacks, which was tied for the most in a single season in 2020. He had 6.5 sacks for the Broncos. Then he had 5.5 in 2021, 6.5 in 2022. Then was on the Seahawks for a couple of years. He had 4.5 in 2023. Then he had 4 sacks in 2024. And then this season with the Titans, he's had 4.5 sacks in 9 games. So 4.5 sacks in 9 games isn't the worst thing in the entire world. Again, especially with them coming in back-to-back games is really cool. So hopefully he can just carry that momentum moving forward, and hopefully he can be a good addition for the team. But again, when it comes to the Ravens trade deadline, I'm just going to say it now, and I said it earlier, but it was disappointing. I am disappointed in this deadline. I am disappointed in the fact that we didn't go out there and make a splash move, because I thought that they were in such a good position to go do that, and they didn't. And they didn't at all. They sat still. They stayed with what they have, and they're going to move forward with that. I'm sure that they called teams and asked. I'm sure that we tried to be aggressive. But I do think teams asked for a lot this year, which I guess is normal, but the Ravens are going to stick with what they have. I am disappointed. And I've said it so many times already, but just on paper, just initial reaction, it does seem like a failure of a trade deadline. Especially when you take into account that after this season, when you look at the free agency for next season, like this upcoming offseason, there's going to be quite a few Ravens players that probably are going to leave, because we have a lot of players that are, very important to this team that are going to be free agents this year. One of those guys was at Owe, but obviously he's not on our team anymore. But you look at guys like Tyler Linderbaum, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, guys like that who are going to be free agents next season. So we're going to be free agents this offseason. So there's going to be some key players that are going to leave. As of right now, I don't think that we're going to re-sign Tyler Linderbaum, so I think he's going to be gone. I think that we're going to choose between Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely, and I think that we're leaning Isaiah Likely right now just because he is younger, and I think that his connection with Lamar, in a way, I wouldn't say is better, but it's fine, and it's really, really, really good. And also with the age, I think that Isaiah Likely has a higher ceiling than Mark Andrews does as of right now. So there's going to be some, big guys leaving in free agency. So the window just feels really open for the Ravens. And even when they went and signed Jair Alexander, it felt like one of those moves where, they're kind of trying to go all in this year, because they know that in terms of roster and talent on the roster, this might be the best that it gets for a while. We are, I'm just going to say right now, unless we go out and make a big move this offseason or sign someone big or trade for someone, we are most likely going to get worse this next season. We'll see what happens in the draft and whatnot, but in terms of free agents leaving, we are most likely going to be getting worse going into next season. This roster we have right now is probably going to be better than next season's roster and moving forward. So it really just felt like an all-in opportunity for them to kind of go in when the window is open. I understand the record sitting at 3-5. I understand that doesn't look good, but the record doesn't tell the whole story with the season. There was a Lamar Jackson injury for 3 games where he went 1-2 without him. We also just lost so many heartbreaking games early on because of this defense. So, it doesn't necessarily tell the whole story. This Ravens team as assembled, right now, is not a 3-5 team. Obviously, when you get Lamar Jackson back, you saw what happened on Thursday Night Football. And moving forward, when we play the Vikings, when we play the Browns, the Bengals, the Jets, hopefully we're going to be winning those games. But this team right now, again, is not a 3-5 team. The record doesn't tell the entire story, but the Ravens slowly, week by week right now, are going to have to kind of pull themselves out of this hole that they dug themselves in. We were 1-5. If we had any sort of chance to get back into the season, they're going to have to do it 1 week at a time. And they won against Chicago without Lamar, and then they get Lamar back. They won against Miami. And we've talked so many times about that certain 6-game stretch. There's 4 games left of that stretch, and it starts on Sunday against Minnesota, which we're obviously going to be talking about a lot this week leading up to the game. Any sort of injury reports, news and stuff like that, game preview, all that stuff. We'll go over that obviously this week. But today was all about the trade deadline, and it was a disappointing day. Disappointing day for the Ravens. Definitely upset at the results. We've seen the Ravens make trade deadline moves before. I remember last year, one of the moves at the deadline was the Deontay Johnson move, which obviously did not work out at all. It was a complete disaster. But you look back to a few years ago when we went and traded for Roquan Smith, like 15 minutes before the trade deadline ended a few years ago. We went out and traded it was like a second and a fourth for Roquan Smith, and obviously it's worked out well. He's been a great player here. He's had some down. This season hasn't been the best year ever, and neither was last year. But he still is like one of the leaders of this defense and stuff like that. So we've seen the Ravens go out there and make moves like that before. But it also, another reason why it was just frustrating is that there was names out there that like completely aligned with what you need, like guys like Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald and Quinnen Williams from the Jets, and even guys like Dexter Lawrence, Max Crosby, who could potentially get traded. Like, there was a lot of big names out there on teams that are struggling that you could just give a call and see if they want to trade. And again, just nothing ended up happening. Like, even getting Calais Campbell would have been really cool. Like, bringing him back at the age that he is probably wouldn't have taken a lot. That one was one that I thought was going to happen, either getting him or Kevin Zeitler back on the offensive line. So, again, the trade deadline is over. We move forward with the team that we have. But in terms of expectations for the season and if it really changes right now, I would say no. Again, none of the moves that were made over the past few days are anything worth, like, needle moving at all. I mean, signing Carl Lawson is cool, getting Draymond Jones is cool, but I just don't think as of right now that it's like a needle moving thing. Again, we'll see what happens as we move on throughout time, but the expectations for this team is hopefully that they can keep winning these games over the next month or so. They can put themselves in a good position. They can win the North, win the AFC North, get into the playoffs, have home field advantage, at least in the wild card. And then you go from there, and then you try and make a deep playoff run. You have the quarterback to do it. You have the talent on the team to do that. But we're just going to have to mesh together, work around some of the problems with the D-line and stuff like that, and hope that we can go out there and win games. And the next thing that I want to go over is about the Baltimore Orioles. Now, we haven't had a lot of Orioles news really over the last month or so while, the baseball playoffs have been going on. And I do want to give a quick shout out to the Dodgers, obviously, for winning the World Series. Congrats to them. It was, in my opinion, one of the best World Series in recent history. I think that Game 7 is really one of the best baseball games I've ever seen. I think it put a lot of people on baseball around the world and around the country. So I do think that the World Series was a complete success from an entertainment value perspective. I thought it was really, really, really cool. So shout out to them. Shout out to the MLB. They did their thing. And it's cool to see the direction that baseball is heading in terms of like viewership and all that stuff and how it was so big. So it's going to be really exciting moving forward. Obviously heartbreaking for the Blue Jays. And to be honest with you guys, I really wasn't really rooting for the Blue Jays. I also didn't really want to root for the Dodgers, but the Blue Jays are in our division. They also had Jeff Hoffman, which that is a whole thing that we've talked about before. So, but anyway, the Orioles and pretty much every other baseball team, their offseason is going to start very, very soon over the next couple of days. And today, Craig Albernaz, who this was the last time that we actually really talked about the Orioles, was when they went out and hired Craig Albernaz as the next manager of the Baltimore Orioles. And today he had his official press conference. I was watching it earlier today on YouTube. It was very, very, very cool to watch. I love this guy. I think that even after hearing his press conference, hearing how the way that he answers questions, how passionate he is about the job, and heading into it, how excited he is, his vision, all that stuff. And I said it again, like even when we first hired him, and I gave my initial thoughts on it in the video that we made. I think that Craig Albernaz is a perfect fit for the Orioles. I think that the stars aligned. I think it's a perfect fit for this team. And again, I'm so happy that they went out and got someone out of organization. I kept saying that over and over and over again. I would have been super upset if they rehire Tony Mansolino. Again, shout out to Tony Mansolino. He is a great guy, but again, as I've said so many times before, I just don't think that he's a leader for this team and a manager for this team moving forward. I think that this team, with the talent that they have, with the direction that they have, with the money that they have to spend, I think that they needed a culture change, and I think Craig Albanese is the perfect guy to fill the role as manager moving forward, and I'm so excited for this next Orioles season. And free agency hasn't even started yet, and I don't even know what signings that we're going to make. We are going to talk a lot about free agency and Orioles free agency in tomorrow's episode. Tomorrow we're going to go over the Ravens practice stuff. We're going to go over that stuff and talk about that. But the focus of tomorrow's episode really is going to be about the upcoming free agency for the Orioles and guys and names of people that I really want them to be aggressive and go after, and who I think could be a good fit, who I don't think could be a good fit, and just some guys that I really think that we should go after, because there's a lot of optimism regarding this offseason. There's a lot of hype regarding this offseason around the Orioles, because Mike Elias has even said, and he said it again today, David Rubenstein said it again today, that one, there's no financial restrictions apparently going into this offseason, and David Rubenstein said, like, word by word, we want to go out and get the best players we can. So that in itself is very confident. It's very cool to hear that. Obviously, we actually have to go see them make the moves and, you know, see what they actually do in free agency. Like, obviously you can say, oh, we want to go out and like be aggressive and sign guys, but until you actually do it, you know, nobody's really going to believe you. So especially what happened this past offseason, I really would like to see them kind of right their wrongs in a way, and that's kind of this offseason really is like the Mike Elias redemption offseason. That's what this is. You know, the Orioles had 101 wins in 2023. They had 91 wins in 2024. They had the bye in 2023. They had home field advantage in 2024, and obviously home field advantage in 2023. So, again, this team was moving in the right direction. Everything was looking really good. I think they were, sixth in World Series odds heading into this last season. And obviously, it was an extremely disappointing year. I mean, they went 75 and 87. They took a big, massive, down. They went down, and a big part of that has to do with the underperformances on the offense, but mainly how bad the starting pitching was going into the year and how bad it was really at the beginning of the year as well. And they couldn't really climb out of the hole that they dug themselves in. The starting pitching was horrible. We understand that. So tomorrow we are going to go over a lot of names that I want to look into, because there's like 5 to 6 pitchers that I would love for the Ravens, or not the Ravens, that I would love for the Orioles to go after. And then there's also some bullpen guys and some closers that I really want them to try and get as well. So we'll go over that tomorrow. Going to be really fun episode to really kick off the MLB offseason for the Orioles. But today was the press conference for Craig Albanese, and again, as I said earlier, a very good press conference. He seems extremely excited about this team. And one of the things that really, stood out to me in this press conference was he was basically, he kind of got asked, what is it like to be, and this wasn't in the press conference, this was in another interview, a couple hours before, outside of Camden Yards. And he was asked, what does it mean to be the manager of this team? What does it mean to be the newest manager of this team? And he responded with saying, it's the Baltimore Orioles, kind of putting a very big statement on the Baltimore Orioles name. Now, the Orioles have not been a very successful team over the past 20 to 30 years. They haven't won a World Series since 1983. It's been a long, long time since they've won a championship. It's been over 40 years since they've won a championship in the city of Baltimore, and people are waiting. People are getting, and I wouldn't say people are getting impatient, but people are waiting. The Orioles went through a lot of bad teams over the last 15 to 20 years. We've seen a lot of bad teams with the Orioles, but they've gotten through it. And even as Craig Albanese said, they went through the rebuild and they did come out on the other side, which we did. We have guys like Gunnar Henderson, Adley Rutschman, Jackson Holliday, Jordan Westburg, guys like that. Samuel Basayo, Dylan Beavers. We have very good players in terms of coming out on the other side of a rebuild. And when you look at all the moves that they made this past trade deadline, with trading 9 players for a bunch of prospects, when you look at the future of the Orioles and the present, it's good all around. And I'm not really concerned about what the future of the Orioles looks like and if it's going to be bad or not. They have a ton of very good prospects that they can either use on the field or they can put in a trade to upgrade the pitching or upgrade other, needs on the team. So either you play the guys or you trade the guys, and either way it should come out very well. So they have a ton of, prospects for the future that they can either trade or play, so that's good. And then obviously when you look at the guys that are on the roster right now, especially the guys that they just called up this past season, Samuel Basayo, Dylan Beavers, and then even Jeremiah Jackson, who looked incredible last season as well after the trade deadline. This Orioles team has everything in front of it. They have a lot of stuff to look forward to. They have incredibly talented position players. We're in this next season. We're going to get to see the first full years, rookie seasons of Dylan Beavers and Samuel Basayo. So there's a lot to look forward to this season, getting a new manager, and I really do think that one of the things that Craig is going to do well is really change the culture with this Orioles team. I think that this is exactly what they needed. Brandon Hyde in a way changed the culture in himself, but obviously when things don't work out in baseball, it's a lot easier to look at your manager than it is to look at other people. And obviously I don't think that going into this year that Brandon Hyde had a super big leash, because when it came to the playoffs, we didn't even win a playoff. We haven't won a playoff game in 10 years. And the past 2 seasons that they made the playoffs with home field advantage, they didn't win in any of those games. So they got swept by the Rangers in 2023. Then they got swept by the Royals in 2024. So it hasn't been good in terms of playoff success. But I think that Albernaz is going to really bring a culture shock and a culture change to this team. And it's perfect for what this team needs. It's exactly what they need. He's very good with youth development, very good with getting to his players. And that is literally perfectly what the Orioles need right now, and I'm so excited for the future of this team. Obviously, I think the Orioles are still in a position where they could potentially still try to make the playoffs this upcoming year. Obviously, the AL East is a gauntlet right now. The Yankees are great. The Blue Jays are great. They just made the World Series. The Red Sox are a good team. The Orioles should be a good team next year. And the Rays should also be a good team next year as well. So the AL East is going to be a gauntlet. But the Orioles are still in a position where they could potentially make the playoffs as a wild card. Or, screw it, they could go and win the division. So we'll see what ends up happening. But obviously, we'll talk about it a lot tomorrow. But this upcoming free agency is, in my opinion, one of the most important free agencies of Baltimore Orioles recent memory. I think that this upcoming offseason might be the most important offseason in the past 30 years for the Orioles, or one of the most important off seasons in a long time for the Orioles. Let's say that. I don't want to say the most important off season in 30 years, but this is going to be and will be the most important off season in a long time. And apparently there's no financial restrictions. There's some incredible pitchers out there. And when it comes to free agency for the Orioles, they need to be all over pitching, whether that's starting pitchers, relief guys, or closers. They need to be all over that. And we'll give, my thoughts of who we should go after tomorrow, but I'm not going to sit here and starting pitching wise, I think that they should get 1 to 2, really one just great quality, very good starter to add along to Rogers and Bradish. I think that they should get some relief guys in there, and then I think that in terms of their bullpen, they should also go and get a very solid, good closer that's available to replace Felix Bautista. So, again, there's a lot to look forward to. I'm going to give my opinions on who we should go after tomorrow. We're going to look at a chart of all the free agents and stuff like that. Because free agency does start very soon. I don't know exactly what day it starts, but I know it starts 5 days after the World Series. So it should be pretty soon that Orioles free agency starts. So it's going to be really, really cool there. And there's a lot to look forward to with this team coming up, which I'm super, super excited about. And before we end this episode, I do want to go over one thing that Craig Albernaz actually did say about the Orioles in the press conference. As you can see here, nice bald, he's happy. He said, "It really is a dream come true. I just can't wait for the fans to come out and watch our boys compete because we're going to play a very exciting brand of baseball." Again, very generic quote, but it just instills more confidence and more energy into this fan base and team, and I just could not be more excited for the future. And going over the move that I was talking about, what the Orioles did earlier this offseason or earlier today, in the graphic earlier where it said that the Ravens made 0 trades and the Orioles made 1 trade, the Orioles actually traded for Andrew Kittredge, which is really funny because Andrew Kittredge was on our team for the first half of last season. We signed Andrew Kittredge in the offseason on like a 2-year deal. So, I mean, we signed him, and then he was on our team for, a majority of the season, all the way up until the trade deadline. He was playing solid. He had his ups and downs, but we traded Andrew Kittredge to the Cubs for like a 17-year-old prospect. So we traded Kittredge to the Cubs, and he was on the Cubs. He was doing his thing. He had his good moments, which I saw. And just now today, we traded cash considerations for Andrew Kittredge. So it was kind of like the Cubs were borrowing Andrew Kittredge. And this was a great move, I guess, for the Orioles because, I mean, we traded for a 17-year-old prospect who is in our top 30, who has the potential to be good somewhere, years down the line. So that's what we traded Andrew Kittredge for. And then, obviously, the Cubs had him for the remainder of last season. They had him for their playoff. They had him in the playoffs as well. So he was only there for like a couple of months. And then now, all of a sudden, randomly, the Orioles traded back for him. So the Cubs were just kind of borrowing Andrew Kittredge. We didn't have to give up any prospects. All we did was give up cash considerations, and now Andrew Kittredge is back on the Orioles. So hopefully he kept his spot here. Hopefully, he liked it here because he's back on the Orioles for his final year of this deal, the deal that he signed with us. So a very weird transaction. Again, a very weird transaction, how he was on our team, we traded him to the Cubs, and then they kind of, we traded back for him just a couple of months later. But this is a good trade. Obviously, getting Andrew Kittredge back in the bullpen is nice to see. And then also the Orioles did re-sign Dentrich Ends to a major league deal for this upcoming season as well. So Andrew Kittredge, Dentrich Ends, two guys who had very solid years. Like when Ends was with the Orioles last year, in like the second half of the season after the trade deadline, he was incredible for the Orioles. So putting him in the bullpen this season, obviously, neither of them are going to be our closer, but Andrew Kittredge in the bullpen, back in the bullpen is nice. Getting Dentrich Ends back into the bullpen is nice. So that's already two solid bullpen arms and reliever arms out there. So obviously I would like to see a couple of more bullpen names out there. But mainly in terms of like the main things, now that these, trades and signings have happened, the two main things are going out and getting a solidified true closer and getting another, good to great starting pitcher you can pair along with Rogers and Bradish, and then also filling up the bullpen and rebuilding that bullpen as well. But getting Andrew Kittredge back and getting Dentrich Ends back is really, really positive and really good news moving forward. But again, thank you guys so much for tuning into and listening to this episode of Birds of a Feather. If you like this content, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow up on Spotify. Also, make sure to click the link in the bio to check out the Twitter and the Instagram. I post all the time on Twitter, even in the past few days where there wasn't a podcast uploaded. Again, everything is good now, so we're good to go. But even in the past few days, I was still posting on Twitter, posting updates to everything, live updates to anything that was going on, my opinions on stuff. So make sure to give the X or the Twitter a follow. It's a lot of fun over there. Make sure to give that a follow. I'm always active on that all the time. And then on Instagram, I post every single time an episode is out, so you never miss a date. So again, I appreciate you guys so much. We'll be back at it again tomorrow, talking about the Ravens, like training day, like not training day, but the Ravens practice day. Tomorrow is the first day of Ravens practice for the week. Obviously, they practice on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Tomorrow is Wednesday, so we're going to go over the Ravens practice. We're also going to go over anything on the injury report or news or anything like that regarding the Ravens. We'll go over that tomorrow. And then for a main portion of tomorrow's episode, we are going to go over a lot of upcoming free agents that the Orioles are going to have to choose from. And I'm kind of going to be going over some good fits and stuff like that. So we're going to be going over that tomorrow. I appreciate you guys so much. Sorry for not uploading for the past few days. Everything is good now. We're good to go. But I will see you guys tomorrow. You have a great sales day. Go O's, go Ravens, and I'll see y'all later. Peace out.